Welcome to the Blessed Community Church podcast series. Here we delve into a variety of subjects aimed at helping you grow in your faith and deepen your understanding of Christianity. Follow us on social media at BlessedCC and visit our website blessedcc.org for more information. We hope you enjoy the podcast and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Hello everyone. Today, as you can see, we've got Steve Clifford and myself. And Steve, you just recently returned with Anne from a trip, which was long planned and finally executed. Tell us a bit about that, and then we'll get on to some of the subject matter that involved in that.
Yeah, we got back after a 3-month trip at the very end of June, and Anne and I, in a tin can, otherwise known as a camper van, were tracking some of the journeys of the Apostle Paul, St. Paul, through Greece, Italy, Sicily, onto Malta, back to Italy, and eventually concluding the journey as recorded in the Book of Acts in Rome. So it was an amazing experience, and possibly we'll do the Turkish leg of his work next year or the year after. That's some of the thinking that we have at the moment.
That's great. So some of the things that came out of that, I think you had time to reflect, not only, of course, on the life and the journey of Paul, because in your blogs or that I saw, you were obviously reading appropriate things from the scriptures, in accordance with where you were and so on. But it also gave you time to reflect on other things and perhaps some of the bigger issues going on at the moment. And I think that there can't be many people who aren't concerned about what's going on in the world, if not downright scared, in fact. But I think that as Christians, we do have a perspective on those things. And I'm just wondering if you've got any thoughts, because we had a little chat when you came back, which just interested me a lot, because I think you had some thoughts about issues of power and maybe wealth and religion and so on. Just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think the backdrop to it, Ian, is that actually I came back with a deep respect, actually, for the Apostle Paul operating, in this Roman Empire, the dominance of Rome right across the known world, and here this Jewish teacher, and the Jews weren't the most popular people in the world at that time. Here he was, going into these sophisticated cities like Athens, like Corinth, like Rome, like Ephesus, and the sophistication of those cities, the kind of the rich living in enormous villas, the temples, the political systems that were there, the sophistication of just water systems, moving water in and out of this, the philosophical thought dominated by the Greek philosophers, the religious institutions, the great big temples and all this. And here comes Paul with a message, a very, a profound message, but a scandalous message, and a stupid message, a scandal to the Jews and foolishness to the Greeks and to the Romans about a Jewish Messiah, a Messiah that was fulfilling all that the Old Testament had spoken about, who died on a Roman cross, was then resurrected to life again, and then ascended into heaven, has become the ruler, the emperor of all the world. And this is his message. And as I went into some of these ancient cities, and I was just struck by the bravery of this man, being willing to go in there, but also the power of the message, as he called it, his gospel, the good news that impacted lives, changed lives, and within 300 years, the whole Roman Empire had, in some way, and there's a discussion to be had whether this was for good or for bad, but had converted to Christianity. And so I came away deeply impressed with the work the Apostle Paul was doing. But then I began to contrast some of that with what I was seeing in some of the kind of churches and religious places that we were visiting. And I guess I was struck by, and I think for me it was personified. There was an example for me where it all struck home, and it was on the island of Malta, where of course Paul was shipwrecked.
Yes.
And in the capital city there, Valletta, there's a co-cathedral, as it's called, of St. John. And it's just bling personified. I mean, gold everywhere you look. And it was built by these somewhat secretive group called the Knights of St. John. And as I wandered around this cathedral, I was kind of pained by what I was seeing. I mean, there was beauty in the place.
Yes, yes.
And there was things to be impressed with. And in fact, there was some, and I saw this, Anna and I saw it time and time again, some wonderfully devout people who were obviously experiencing God in these settings. But what struck me was that here we were seeing this combination, and I kind of feel deeply unhappy about what I was seeing, of power. The Knights of St. John were the powerful, were the elite of the Middle Ages, the kind of 13th, 14th, 15th century, and on until today. Here they were, and they had built this cathedral, and they were their chapels, and the more money a country, the knights of that country gave, the closer they got to the altar. And it was this combination of power and wealth, and there was so much wealth being expressed there, and religion, that I just felt so uncomfortable about. And it felt as if this was a distortion of the message, the message of Jesus, the message that the Apostle Paul was bringing, this message of a crucified Messiah, of course, of a shipwrecked apostle, because he's shipwrecked on Malta. It just seems so different and a distortion of the Christian faith. And I came away deeply uncomfortable with what I was seeing.
Yeah. So if you look at the simplicity, if you like, of the gospel that Paul preached, and the fact that he himself, as you've already mentioned, was shipwrecked, beaten, crushed, but not completely crushed, a different sort of life. He didn't have great wealth, it seems, and the early message seems to have been contaminated, doesn't it? It's sort of taken over by other ambitions and other desires. And
I think one of the things I reflected to you about that, Ian, was it took me back to some of the roots of Pioneer, actually, and the kind of network of churches that we're part of. And you'll recall, because you were around at the same time as I was around, but
absolutely,
back in the 70s and 80s, that sense which we felt God was speaking to us about returning to a simplicity of expression of the Christian faith. We were part of what was known as a house church movement and a community movement. We were meeting together in homes. We were engaging with each other relationally. We were looking for a simplicity of expression of our faith, and we were, in some ways, I think it was the founder of Pioneer had a lovely phrase. We were looking for non-religious Christianity, and I think that I came away thankful for the roots that are deeply part of my life in terms of the Pioneer network and the house church movement as it was known then, and the community movement is now, because it felt like we were seeking after something, and it's something I want to continue to seek after, expression of the Christian faith, which is far more reflective of the Messiah that modeled servant leadership, community life, genuine relationships together, and relationship with the Father, and looking to reach out to a wider community in a way which was accessible to them.
Yes, well, I think the history of the church has, as we would readily admit, hasn't always been as you've just described, and particularly where temporal or secular power, if you like, has been sort of married to spiritual power. It's always, it seems to me, looking at history, been rather bad news. And we do want to try and regain and hold on to what you've just described, don't you? The fact that it's Jesus, if you look at him and then you look at Paul, who was generally acknowledged as one of the most influential people in history, I don't think most people would, well, for good or ill. I mean, some people criticize him, of course, but I'm interested so much that you've come away with a heightened respect for him, because you're probably, like me, very familiar with all the the things that he wrote, but visiting those places and just having time to contemplate on them must have been most fascinating for you. And I think that we do need to just get back to something. I think there's always this feeling of needing to get back to something. We can't reproduce it. It wasn't all perfect, in the early days. That would be a wrong thought to say, oh, they had it all right and we've got to do exactly like that, because Acts is honest enough to show times when the early church didn't get it all right, did they? But nevertheless, there's something underlying it, something, the purity, if you like, but certainly the simplicity of it that we would certainly want to hold on to. And we do make things too difficult, sometimes too complex, but also we get drawn in by other things, don't we? Well, I think that's that. I mean, for me, that's an interesting little taster. And I think that in the course of these podcasts, there'll be time to return to some of these issues. But for now, Steve, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Ian.
That's all for this episode of the Blessed Community Church podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and found it to be informative and inspiring. We would love for you to join us on a Sunday, either in person or online. For more information, please visit our website, blesscc.org. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to sharing more content with you soon. Have a great day.